tribal situation where people are living drastically below the poverty line. As a worker there, she's trying to make people be positive, but they're hungry. Literally, their stomachs are empty. They don't have a home. And they're telling her we can't be positive, so what to do? Well, it's really interesting situation, because this brings us into actually what we really do already know, which is until and unless someone's most basic needs are met, they can't usually, there are some exceptions, but they usually cannot begin to start to think spiritually. It's like, there was a philosopher, Maslow, who gave us a hierarchy of needs, right? I'm not going to go into all of it, but basically the gist being, first, you have to have your stomach full. First, you have to have a roof over your head. First, you have to have access to basic education, basic health care. Only then can you start family and connections, and then ultimately, once everything else is kind of in place, only then can we start to really have spiritual ideals. And this is why it's really so important to do as much as we can to feed them, to house them, to give them education. Meditation is not a substitute for food. It's not a substitute for a house. And this is why, for example, here, we work on both levels. People say, what do you do? And I say, well, if what people need is logistic, we feed them. We educate them. We have free medical camps. We have vocational training. We'll clean the water, toilets, if what they need is a toilet. We're going to build that for them. You feed the hungry. You house the homeless. You educate the uneducated. You train the untrainable, because even though, as I said, it's not impossible to be happy and spiritually connected when you don't have those things, it's much harder. And so this is where the social work needs to be so deeply integrated with the spiritual work. If you're walking into a place where people have everything, as I always explain, on the other hand, the people whose stomachs are full but hearts are empty, right? So for them, it's all about meditation. It's all about spiritual programs. It's all about, satsang and yoga. But for people, if what they need is a hot meal, if what they need is medical treatment, if what they need is to be able to send their children to school, it's our responsibility, I deeply believe, to give that to them. And to not be stuck with, I teach meditation, so I realize you're hungry, but would you like to sit down and meditate? It's foolish, bordering on criminal, unless I don't have the ability to feed that person. If all I can give you is meditation because we're going to sit here hungry together, okay. I can ease the emotional suffering that goes with the physical pain in your stomach. But if I have the ability to feed you, and I don't, because I'm so stuck in my own role of a spiritual teacher or a meditation teacher, that I forget how to feed someone, I've gone really far off my path. And so I'm going to give you two suggestions. One is a strategic suggestion, and the other is more of a spiritual suggestion. So the strategic suggestion is, there are lots of organizations, governmental and non-governmental, faith-based organizations and non-faith-based organizations, that are providing logistic services in those areas. Team up with them so that in the communities, in the area where they are feeding people, they are building schools, they are putting in toilets, but people are still negative because they're still, it's human nature, and maybe they've been negative for so long that that's their personality. Maybe they've turned to alcohol, and so that's created a problem. Then along with that, your programs of spiritual positivity are going to be much more successful if you're working hand in hand with organizations who are also making sure that people's stomachs are filled, and making sure that if they've got an illness, that they're getting treated for it, that they've got a roof over their head. Then you can come in and start teaching practices of gratitude and practices of positivity and all of this, which is crucial. But trying to do that in a vacuum is really difficult. So I really understand where you're coming from. So strategically, I would say find those organizations, partner with them, and work in the areas where they are working. So that as people are getting their logistic needs met, you are there to help them transform from victims, from people who don't have, from an internal experience of lack and deprivation, to an internal experience of abundance, an internal experience of security, which tragically doesn't always come simply because I now have a roof over my head. We all know plenty of people in the world who have not just one, but perhaps many roofs to choose from, who nonetheless don't feel full, who nonetheless don't feel like it's enough, who nonetheless are living in an experience of lack and scarcity. So that's the strategic one. On a spiritual level, the more you can help people touch, even for a moment, the power of love within them, get them helping other people. So regardless of what they have, and you may have to provide it, but get them serving others in some way. Get them running a kitchen that's feeding others. You may have to provide the food, but get them cooking and preparing it. Get them engaged in a way so that they feel that who they are and what they have, in terms of just their abilities, their time, their energy, is actually something that benefits others. Because from that gives us an experience of realizing, oh wow, I have something. There I thought I had nothing. I was living in lack and deprivation, but here, look, through me, this person has benefited. And on a spiritual level, if you're running spiritual programs, get them to close their eyes and meditate. Get them to touch that place of love within them. Get them to experience it, even if it's just for 2 minutes. But then, if you possibly can, feed them also.